David Gasson averaging over 14 points and nearly 7 rebounds, shooting 70% from the floor. His offensive rating of 141.8 is not only the highest of his career, it ranks 25th in the country out of guys with a usage rate of 18 or higher. Out of guys with a usage rate of 18 or higher, David's offensive rating ranks number 9 in the country and number 3 in the Big 12. So he's been that good. And Brendan Hawson shooting 43+% from the floor is top 10 in the country of guys that have attempted 70 or more threes, which there aren't a lot of them, but he's shooting tremendously from beyond the arc.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Fremont. I'm John Kurtz, joined by Manbeck and Derek Young. Here to talk some hoops today. We have not had a chance to do much of this because of football season. We have heard your demands, and we'll talk about where K-State is at through 9 games of the non-conference schedule. Our show is always brought to you by our good friends at Holiday Distillery. Wherever you're going to be watching K-State basketball, wherever you're going to be watching the Rate Bowl, make sure that you have some Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond bourbon on hand or 360 vodka for those who prefer that. We get rave reviews all the time about Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond bourbon from our bourbon connoisseur listeners out there, and a Holiday Distillery full of great K-Staters who support us. So please go support them. Basketball season, gonna be honest, guys, it has not been a whole lot of fun so far. K-State's already lost 3 games. They're 6-3. Most recently, had a 10-point lead in the first half at St. John's. The Red Storm score 53 points in the second half, outscore K-State by 21 and win by 17. Long break here with finals before you take on Drake next week. But I guess I'll start with you, DY. How would you give kind of the State of the Union address on K-State basketball through 9 games this year?
I would say the talent is there. It may not be what we once thought it was. So I think I would drop the ceiling that I once had just a little lower, not because of anything tangibly changed with this team other than the results. It's just, I think I thought some guys might have been better than what they truly are. And I would drop the floor a lot because all those, and I'll give them credit, the national pundits throughout the offseason that really questioned the fit and how some of these pieces go together seem to be proven correct in some ways. So a little bit of good, a chunk of pretty bad, and a little bit left of we'll see if they can fix it from here. You want to ask me the most alarming thing going forward, I would say, is I don't feel like there's one guy you can go to and hang your hat on right now. Brendan Hawson has probably been one of maybe your most consistent guy, but obviously that's if he's your best player or David Gasson's your best player. Nothing against those two. They've played pretty well. Things are probably not going to go well if they are your best player. It has to be a Doug McDaniel or a Cohen Hawkins, and it just hasn't been, at least not for more than a game here or a game there. So that's where I'm at. And I would close by saying we're not in Big 12 play yet, so there is a long ways to go for, if you're a Kansas State supporter that wants to still hold out hope, or you're a coach or a player that says, whoa, we're only 9 games in. We still got a shot to turn this thing around. Of course you do. But it's got to start sooner rather than later with Big 12 play just around the corner. And 3 losses, I will say this, 3 losses right now is far from best case scenario when you do have 20 Big 12 games, because at some point those losses are going to pile up and hurt your NCAA tournament resume. And let's be honest, they have, 2 non-conference games left that I would deem as both losable right now, and Drake and Wichita State, because they are at least serviceable programs. And calling Drake serviceable is probably disrespect to them. They're more than serviceable right now. Wichita State might be the serviceable one. They've had some good results. They also got punked by Florida, so we'll see what happens there.
I want to say before Cole gives his State of the Union here that with the the sun and the shadows all hitting his face the way that they do. I mean, it looks like this could be like an emo album cover or something like that, which seems to sort of fit the mood here.
Yeah.
Cole didn't really want to talk basketball. We had to kind of pull it out of him. So, but he says he's ready.
No one wants to. But
Apologies. The blinds aren't really doing the trick today. That sun is blasting through the window, so I'm sorry about that. But for those that are watching on YouTube, look, I mean, DY outlined it when I did a show with Evan Miyakawa, college basketball statistician, data scientist, back in the offseason. He had mentioned the highs and lows, the ceiling and floor of this team could be a top 20 team, top 15 team in the country, and it could also be a team that misses the NCAA tournament altogether. And what you see when you're replacing 10, 11 guys on rosters is there's a lot of fluidity to the successes of those teams, and a lot of those teams miss the tournament altogether. Now, I'm not saying here in December, on December 11th, when we're recording this, that's what's going to happen with this basketball team, because our mindset could change a lot if they go 3-0 in the rest of December. They got 3 games left this month. They win those 3. They're 9-3. Drake is 43rd in the net. Wichita State's 80th in the net rankings. And then Cincinnati is top 30 in the net rankings. So you can really help your profile with some wins. However, K-State is 103rd in the net right now. So they got a long ways up to go. Now, again, in the Big 12, with the competition that you play, you're going to have opportunities to significantly improve your resume and your profile and make significant jumps in the net. So I don't get so caught up in that, because if you win enough Big 12 games, you're going to probably ultimately be fine, but you can't go 6-5 in the non-con. Really, they need to find a way to claw out the next 2 wins against Drake and Wichita State. Now, Bart Torvik projects K-State actually to beat Drake by 6, which is interesting. Drake is 8-0. Gives K-State a 74% win probability, that game being in Kansas City on December 17th. And then actually projects K-State to lose to Wichita State by 1, 77-76 in his projections. Now, that's at Wichita State. That will be an interesting game to watch. But
I think something there that some of these metrics are also losing sight of a little bit. It's interesting because it's considered a home game. They consider like that Drake game to be in Bramlage Coliseum almost. It will be counted as a home game, interestingly enough.
Yeah. So it's been a disappointing start to the season. I mean, I think I probably had higher expectations than what we've seen on the court at this point. Was super excited about the transfer haul that Kansas State brought in. And you guys heard me say this numerous times, that I was waiting to really cast any judgment on this team until early December. There was a lot of new parts. I wanted to see how they got better, over the first few weeks and played several games together. And we have seen some glimpses where you're like, okay, I could see how the pieces could work here. George Washington, first half, I was ecstatic about what I saw in that first half. Now, the second half, things tighten up. St. John's first half, a lot of good things that we saw there. Second half, it collapses. And so there are glimpses. There's glimmers of hope. But can they put it together for 40 minutes? They haven't really done that against good competition yet in the teams that they have played. And do they have enough leadership? I question, who's going to step up and lead this basketball team? Because right now what I see, guys, is when there's some adversity in a game, I don't see a guy speaking up necessarily. I don't know who is that vocal guy. David Gasson is probably your best leader in terms of work ethic and how he plays, but he's not really a huge vocal guy.
It doesn't even have to be a vocal guy. Here's the thing. My thing is you're right on the leadership thing, but it's more about when the other team goes on a run, and we just saw this against St. John's. Like, they played a good half, right? Halftime, it's tight. St. John's comes out the second half, goes on one run, and Kansas State wilts. Like, it's not even about saying anything. It's about doing something when you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, they were up 41-35 in the first 15 seconds of the second half, and then St. John's went on a run that outscored them 35-12.
Right.
After that.
No one's like, it's like every time, and I don't think St. John's was the first time it happened. You give up a big run, you get punched in the mouth, and there's no answer.
LSU. It happened against LSU as well. When things got out of hand, K-State just couldn't put any game pressure on the Tigers in that one.
They don't respond to adversity at all.
Yeah. And so, can that change over the course of time? Like, I've always talked to coaches in the past when I covered the sport more thoroughly, and they always talked about this timeline being right now, finals and onward until the winter or spring semester starts as the time that they improve the most, because they get to spend a ton of time together and they focus on basketball. They're out of school. They have a month where it's just basketball. And so we'll see what happens in this timeline. K-State had their last game on December 7th. Their next one's December 17th. How much do they improve in those 10 days? What do they get better at? And then they play December 21st, and then they don't play again until December 30th against Cincinnati to open Big 12 play in Bramlage. So what changes over these next 3 weeks, as they only have 3 games? How much better can they get? There's a lot of areas they have to improve, and if you look at the numbers, there's some things where they're actually quite a bit better than they were at last year. Now, keep in mind, we're only 9 games in. The numbers that we look at are going to change because the competition is going to get better. So you're looking at the full lens of 2023-24 versus 9 games in and a weaker non-con in 2024-25 season. But a lot of the numbers are quite a bit better in certain key areas, but the defensive numbers, guys, is actually where they're trending downward from the past couple of years into the Jerome Tang era in Manhattan. The defense hasn't quite been what you would hope.
Well, I would attribute some of that probably to leadership too, and they just don't. A big part of the problem here is there are a lot of problems, but I think a big part of the problem is what's happening at point guard. And you have a couple of guys right now. I mean, Doug McDaniel still is not starting. It feels like they have not been able to get through to him, whatever message that they're wanting to get through to him. He is obviously wildly talented. We've seen that. I mean, he's obviously a piece that if they're going to be a tournament team this year, they've got to have him locked in and playing well. I don't really see the path without it. And they're not totally getting that, certainly not getting the consistency on that. And then CJ Jones just has really struggled, to put it plainly. He has struggled to be really effective in that role without him. And I guess David Castillo is not ready yet to be seeing major minutes there at point guard. So I think that's where a lot of it starts. I know Cole was making the point about defense. That's not necessarily all about defense, but I think that's a real problem area for the team right now, the head of the snake, so to speak, at point guard.
100%. Even when Doug McDaniel's doing some good things, it doesn't seem to be with everyone or within anything that they're wanting to do. It's tough. And then CJ Jones has struggled, but I've kind of beat this drum. I'm not going to say he hasn't struggled. He has. I'm just not sure he's a point guard anyways. And then, so I'm like, well, then maybe David Castillo needs to be that backup point guard. And I get that the St. John's game, with the way that game was being played, might have been overwhelming to a true freshman that, hasn't been thrusted into that type of situation too many times just yet because it was so fast-paced and intense, especially that first half. But if he can't get minutes in that game, how's he ever going to be ready for a Big 12 game? So I wonder about that. I think Cole actually was like, yeah, absolutely, 100% agree, because I came out, everyone was feeling good at halftime. I think Kansas State was up by 4 points. I felt terrible because Kansas State, that was by far the fastest paced game that they had played this year, and especially with intensity for like a straight 20 minutes. And they had played 6 guys, and St. John's had played 10. I was like, they're going to get wore down, and the second half could get brutal, and that's exactly what happened. Now, it got brutal for a number of different reasons, but I think that was one of them, and I'm still looking at this box score from that St. John's game where they played 10 guys. Only 7 for K-State, or only 6 for K-State played more than 9 minutes. I mean, that's tough sledding.
Well, I didn't feel you guys saw it during the game, I didn't feel the first half was sustainable necessarily. When you watched the halftime show, then Casey Jacobson had said St. John's was 4 of 14 on shots at the rim in the first half, and you knew that was probably going to change on the offensive end. And K-State was 8 of 15 from 3, and you knew that probably wasn't going to be sustainable. Brendan Hassan, they were going to key in on, who had a tremendous first half against St. John's. And as a result, I mean, K-State 8 of 15 from 3 in the first half. They go 0 of 10 from 3 in the second half.
Yeah, something we heard all off season, and not to beat a dead horse, was like the depth of this team, like compared to last year. Is like last year when we lost a guy, we were crushed. So this year we went out and got more guys. So when we lose a guy, we're not crushed. Well, then only 6 guys play more than 9 minutes. You went out and got a Chor. He plays 5 minutes. You went out and got Ugonna Onyenso. He's playing 9 minutes. Buddy Rich didn't even play. Byfall didn't play. David Castillo played 2 minutes when there was talk is like, I don't know how I'm not going to start him, was one of the talking points at one point in the offseason. Like, where is that depth? I mean, that has disappeared. So I think that's like we've listed like I think 3 or 4 concerns, and that one might be near the top of the list, and we hadn't even mentioned it yet until this point.
Well, because it's really all encompassing, right? Like that shows the kind of depth of problems that they have right now. Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that was spent on this roster has been pretty well publicized. And if you're going to do that and go out and get that many guys, yeah, you can't be sitting here only playing 6 of them. And it's been really perplexing, like what's gone on with Ugo. Like they can't seem to figure it out.
He had a couple injuries, so that's a little bit better. Right.
He's been slowed. Yes, there have been things. Ashore had to be away from the team for a little while. That is fair, but we're still getting pretty deep.
Yeah, Achore's been back plenty long enough. And not to like single anyone out because he's not the only one that played a bad game against St. John's, but we pointed out what he played 4 minutes in the first half, and a half that they led by 4, and he was minus 15. Usually not a stat that is sometimes representative, but I think that was pretty representative.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he undoubtedly struggled. CJ Jones struggled a lot in that game, going 0-7 from the floor. He posted an offensive rating, I want to say, of like 6.6. I can't remember the number, 6.1. It was not good. Specific to St. John's, just a couple numbers, and then we can move on to the bigger pictures we've been talking about. But St. John's was 13-39 in the first half, 33% from the floor. And they were 9-26 on twos, guys, under 35%. But in the second half, they were 15-22. On twos, 68%. K-State had 9 assists on 15 made field goals in the first half. They have 1 assist on 10 made field goals in the second half. What I saw, and Doug, we talked about Doug and point guard play. Doug didn't have an assist in the game, which you can't have from your point guard. And obviously Hassan and Ghassan were a combined 15-27 from the floor, 56%. The rest of the team went 22.6%, 10-44 from the floor. Those 2 guys were the only ones that were really stepping up and contributing in a big way. But what I saw in the second half of the St. John's game, guys, was just not enough ball movement, too much one-on-one play. Guys taking fadeaway shots, one-on-one, ISO ball, just not a lot of offensive flow or rhythm to it. And so that was the biggest problem in the second half offensively.
I think that was more the team got lazy because they got punched in the mouth and they just aren't mentally strong enough to withstand that at this point.
Yeah. And I will say St. John's is the best team that they have played. I mean, they were 10.5-point underdogs in that game. I didn't expect them to win at St. John's, but it's just the way the second half crumbled that made you feel about that one because you were hoping you saw some encouraging things there. But anyways.
All right, well, Home Field Apparel will never let you down, no matter what's happening with K-State Hoops. Got a lot of games of Bramlage coming up this year. Get stocked up, homefieldapparel.com. Promo code 3MON24 to get 15% off your first order, 50-plus K-State designs, including that incredible pullover that you saw me wearing earlier this week. Derek's got USC today. Any significance behind that?
I think we've got an offensive lineman from there visiting pretty soon.
Oh, so, okay. All right. There's always...
Don't ask me how to pronounce his name. Maybe Cole can, but... Oof.
There's always some meaning behind it.
Talele is his last...
I don't know.
Cole's not the pronunciation guy.
No, you're definitely the last guy to go to on that.
Yeah. Know your role on the show. That's not Cole's role. Homefieldapparel.com, everybody. Promo code 3MON24, 15% off your first order. Whether you want USC, whether you want K-State, it is all there for you. We're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Really, the other point that I would make on the depth issue is just that it seems to speak to me to the concerns that we all had and that were pointed out, as you guys already outlined, by detractors in the offseason about just the fit of the roster. I mean, a lot of big guys, and then 2 of them are not really giving you anything, but also just on the wing, I mean, Max Jones seems serviceable so far, but not quite athletic enough. I think, especially against a team like St. John's, to be as effective as you'd like him to. And then we outlined like the guard issues. There are not enough capable guards and wings right now that you can turn to. And, I hate to go back to like the Caliph Battle thing, but that felt like such a big blow at the time. And that's the type of guy that they could really, really use right now on this team, in addition to just, a point guard with some leadership. It just raises a lot of questions to me, I think, about, roster construction moving forward. And do you need to maybe not swing for the fences as much and go get some more solid guys that are not these high tier, really expensive players? I understand the idea behind doing some of that, but I think they would have been better off perhaps taking guys with a little bit more grit, toughness in some of those spots, and just distributing it a little bit more in terms of what you have in your backcourt versus what you have in your front court. It feels a lot of times this year like kind of an island of misfit toys, even though you can see plenty of talent out there in a lot of these guys. It's not fitting together real well.
I got two takeaways there. One is like the defense stuff that Cole was talking about. I don't know that's. I think that might be more of a personnel thing, because like you look at the lineup and you're looking at your backcourt. I'm not sure you have a really good perimeter defender. Doug McDaniel's never going to be known to be a perimeter defender. He kind of plays defense a little bit like Marquise Noel. Nothing wrong with that if you have other good guys around you, but if you're just going to gamble and try to get steals, that's fine, but the rest better be doing their job or able to do their job. And I'm not sure that's there, because Brendan Hazen plays hard, was one of the better perimeter defenders, which might be saying something against St. John's. Max Jones, I don't know if you got someone laterally athletic enough to guard a lot of guys in the Big 12. Brendan Hazen, I'm not sure you have someone laterally athletic enough to guard a lot of guys in the Big 12. CJ Jones is having a hard time staying in front of guys as well. Coleman Hawkins hasn't really guarded anyone very well on the perimeter. And then, so if you don't have a lot of good on-ball perimeter defenders, you better have a rim protector. Your rim protector is riding the bench all year, and you got a Onyenso for the most part, or hurt. David Gasson is a really good defender, but if you ask him to be a rim protector, you're asking him to do something that he's not as equipped to do. He's more of a guarder that can switch every position, not be a rim protector. So the pieces don't really fit there, and the personnel's not necessarily conducive to defense. You brought up the wing area. And all this stuff is easy to say now in hindsight. We weren't saying it at the time when they built this team. So shame on us a little bit too. I get it. But like, I'm going to go down the line of all the guys that played against St. John's, and you tell me if there is a natural wing, not a one or a two guard or a big, a natural wing. Dave Gasson, Max Jones, CJ Jones, Brendan Hazen, Coleman Hawkins, Doug McDaniel, David Castillo, Achor, Ugonna Onyenso. I don't think you got a natural player there where the three is their number one position, like, so to speak, for example.
Yeah. Well, the defensive rating right now is 63rd in the country at 99.5. Keep in mind, the lower the number when it comes to defensive rating, the better. They were 25th in the country last year at 96.8, and they were 27th in the country at 95.0 in 2022, 2023. And so they're at 99.5, but keep in mind, again, the competition is going to significantly increase now even more. And so that number will be harder to maintain. And so the defense has certainly fallen off early to start the year. Do they have the pieces to get better there? I mean, yeah, we'll have to see what adjustments can they
got to get creative. They got to get creative.
I mean, Jerome Tang mentioned in the offseason he foresaw this being a team similar to that Baylor team, and that went to the Elite Eight with all that length. And I think it was, 2011-12 season, John, that he mentioned.
They played a lot of zone.
They played a lot. Well, and when they went zone so far this year, it has not been good. So, yeah, I don't know, how the pieces are going to necessarily fit together. There's certainly some promise that you see, but there's a lot of concerns as well. I think the lack of a playmaking second guard hurts them. Like, to your guys' point, Max Jones is, solid.
I think he's a shooter.
Yeah. CJ Jones has been disappointing so far in my mind, from what we have seen. And so, do they have guys that can blow by you and create for others outside of Doug McDaniel? And Doug's a little bit up and down right now, obviously. Now, I will say Doug has an assist rate of 31.3%, which ranks 7th in the Big 12, out of guys with a usage rate of 18 or higher. That's ahead of guys like DeJuan Harris and Taman Lipsey at Iowa State. It's the highest assist rate of his career. His steal rate is top 25 in the country. But just too much up and down. Like St. John's doesn't have an assist, and you need your point guard to be able to slow the game down when.
And he was another guy that looked like he checked out as soon as St. John's went on that run in the second half.
I do need to mention this, guys, because and real quick, David Gasson averaging over 14 points and nearly 7 rebounds, shooting 70% from the floor. His offensive rating of 141.8 is not only the highest of his career. It ranks 25th in the country out of guys with a usage rate of 18 or higher. Out of guys with a usage rate of 18 or higher, David's offensive rating ranks number 9 in the country and number 3 in the Big 12. So he's been that good. And Brendan Hawson shooting 43+% from the floor is top 10 in the country of guys that have attempted 70 or more threes, which there aren't a lot of them, but he's shooting tremendously from beyond the arc. So you see positive things there, but you look at a guy like Coleman, and again, we've talked about it before. Coleman isn't necessarily, a guy that's going to blow up the scoreboard or the box score when it comes to points throughout his career, but his offensive rating of 96.9 on a 20% usage rate is the second worst on the team out of the guys in the normal rotation. It's the worst offensive rating of his career. I mean, Coleman posted a 125.2 offensive rating in Big Ten play last year as well. And so, the numbers are quite a bit down. And you also worry about his 3-point shot, guys, because last year he shot a career high, 37% from 3, 59 and 160. But his 3-point percentage of 28.6% this season on 35 attempts falls in line with his career numbers outside of last season. Prior to last season, his first 3 seasons at Illinois, he was 59 at 210, 28%. And he's shooting 28.6 right now. So was last year more the outlier? I hope not. I think Coleman is a better player by far than what he is, what we've seen so far. I still think he's trying to adapt, not trying to bury Coleman Hawkins here.
I think you could say that about most of the pieces on this team, a better player than they have shown so far. Are they a better player together? I don't know.
And again, back to the fit, if the roster fit is weird and you've got problems at point guard and all these different things, I'm sure all that contributes. I feel bad for Coleman Hawkins because he has to wear more of it just because he was the guy that drew more headlines than everybody else with the money. But there are a lot of highly paid guys on this roster where things aren't coming together. And that's again, some of the price that you pay for having such an expensive roster. You're going to take a lot of crap for it if you're losing games. And that is another thing that they'll have to deal with that can build and, make everybody kind of feel worse throughout the season. So
heavy burden to carry.
Yeah, it comes with a whole bunch of other problems. We don't even need to go down that road totally at this point. It's still too early, but that comes with a lot of problems if things start to spiral the way that they have so far. Let's get to, I'm going to try and infuse a little bit of positivity here for the top storyline of the week, which is brought to you by our friends at Alenco, ALENCO home.com to get hooked up with them for all your home improvement needs. Appreciate their work as always. Cole, I guess I'll start with you. So what is first of all, shout out to David Gasson. Like you said, he has been phenomenal. And if they had 3 more David Gassons on the roster, preferably a couple of them in the backcourt, they'd be a damn good team right now. That guy, I have so much respect for that guy. Probably proves a point as well about just retention and a guy that you've had for 3 years who's playing the way that he is for you right now. But again, we're in season. We don't need to go big picture on a lot of that stuff. But what is the path? What is the path for this team to play like a tournament team? Obviously, you outlined the next 3 games, but how do they win the next 3 games?
Boy, I guess I should be on the staff if I could answer that, right? But they do have to win. They really need to win the next 3 games. I think everybody would be feeling a lot better if they're able to go 3-0 in the rest of December because those would be some nice wins. I mentioned it earlier. Drake is 43rd in the net rankings. Cincinnati is top 30 in the net. Wichita State's better than I think many expected. They're top 80 in the net rankings. That's a road game. And so those are big opportunities for Kansas State. And then you head into Big 12 play and you've got 20 opportunities in league play to improve your resume and to tack on a ton of quality wins. And so if this team can start playing together more and be more consistent and play 40 minutes of solid basketball versus 20, 25 like we've seen in spurts, throughout the season. I think that's going to be the biggest thing because they have some tools. They can win games. And like I said earlier, we've seen glimmers. We've seen glimpses of them being successful. You watch them for like 20 minutes in a game. You're like, oh, yeah, I mean, this is what this team could potentially be. But they haven't maintained it in several of those opportunities, several of those moments. And so that's got to change. Obviously, we talked about the defensive struggles. They've got to improve on the defensive end of the floor. They've got to play consistently hard for 40 minutes a game. There are lapses when it comes to effort at times for this team. And, when adversity hits, like we talked about, they've struggled to respond at moments as well. If you want to look at it, from an analytics standpoint, Bart Torvik has K-State ranked number 56 in the country right now. Now, this isn't good. He projects them to go 15-16 overall and 8-12 in Big 12 play. Has them defeating Drake and losing to Wichita State by 1, losing to Cincinnati 71-70, and at TCU 72-70 to start league play. What's interesting about the Bart Torvik numbers, guys, is he has K-State having 10 games decided by 3 points or less in Big 12 play and 14 games decided by 6 points or less in league play. So anticipates them being in a lot of games. Well, we'll see.
That's just like last year.
Yeah. So, are they going to be in a lot of close games? I mean, they lost to Liberty by 2. They got blown out by LSU and then obviously handled in the second half against St. John's. But, the numbers right now, the analytics, and keep in mind we're early still, but they project K-State to be in a lot of tight games to where, you could flip that potentially and win some of those, then you could be in a good spot. We'll see. 5 of the first 6 games in Big 12 play, or actually, I'm sorry, 5 of the next 6, starting with Drake, are projected to be decided by 2 points or less.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll admit I was a little bit surprised when you laid out those numbers to us in the group chat last night, like how close the projections are there. I think it is funny, like last year, as you mentioned, DY, it was like all those close games, but it was kind of a different problem. Last year, you felt like that team just, without Naquan Tomlin, didn't have enough talent, but the coaching was doing a great job to put everybody in position to rip off the hot start that they had to Big 12 play and all that. Just didn't have enough talent to get over the hump. Now you're looking at it like this team seems to have a lot of raw talent, but nothing is really fitting together very well.
To that point, John, I mean, would you guys say this team has more talent than last year's team on paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I find myself asking that to myself at times too, because I thought coming into the season, this team would be more talented than last year's team. And last year's team managed to beat 2-seed Iowa State, 3-seed Baylor, 4-seed KU, 7-seed Texas, 6-seed BYU. They had Texas Tech on the ropes in Lubbock. Tech was a 6-seed. They were within 2 points of Iowa State with 5 minutes left in games. And so, got figured out a way last year. Can they?
Last year's team, even though he wasn't natural, had a point guard that was getting it done for that team with the way he could in Tyler Perry. And they played defense. And they had very few games or stretches where they just laid over and looked disinterested. They had other problems, but it wasn't the problems that this team has. If this team played with the level of intensity that one did and got the at least locked in point guard play that one did, it would look a lot different.
Yeah. I only bring that up because, I say they figured out.
Question.
Yeah, they didn't reach their goal. I mean, they didn't make the NCAA tournament.
No, but I thought last year's team maximized what they had.
Yeah, and so, you think about last year, they got dominated at home by Nebraska in the non-con. Can that St. John's moment be like where they respond now? I don't know. They started 3-0 or 4-0 in league play last year. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens against Drake on Tuesday night.
3-1. There was a loss, but yeah.
Yeah. So.
And even to the point on talent, I mean, I hate to bring stuff like this up, but go look at what Arthur Kaluma is doing this year at Texas. He's 14-8 on 54% shooting. That's 12% better than last year. He's 45% from 3. Maybe some of that will drop off a little bit, but we talk about like needing a wing. I mean, like Arthur Kaluma sounds pretty great right now. Well, that's not saying that everything was perfect with that situation last year, but hindsight's 20/20.
I will say somebody did point out, because I watched Arthur Kaluma play against NC State the other night. He was playing his ass off, playing extremely hard. He had 15 rebounds in that game. I've been impressed with his effort level at Texas when I've watched him. I will say somebody pointed out that through this number of games last year at K-State, he was averaging 16 and 8. And so we'll see if he's able to sustain it. But so far, I've liked the effort that I have seen from him.
And also just from a positional fit.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Kaluma would be very, very helpful.
Yes. Yeah, he's a natural three. He's a guy that can get to the rim. He can finish strong in traffic. And I think they can definitely use that right now.
And like playmaking guard. I mean, Cam Carter, not perfect, but Cam Carter could create some plays. And we saw him do it in Bramlage again this year. I know that was going to be him like at his best, and he had a lot of inconsistencies. But would you take Cam Carter right now?
Yeah, you're trading one set of prawns for another, but
yeah, I mean, the one thing I was going to mention, like the turnover numbers are substantially down from last year. Like
yes, there's one thing. Yes, you would be trading in a problem for some.
That's what I meant. Like you're trading one set of prawns for another.
Well, and so like the things that like they've improved significantly at, they're shooting 37+% from three. Shooting from three was a problem last year. They were 32%, and they've cut turnovers, but it's still not. Defense has fallen.
There's laws, defense falling off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks to Elenco, local company based out of KC, owned by K-Staters. They've been locally owned since 1986. So if you need new windows or bathroom remodel, they've got premium window replacements and Kohler Luckstone shower systems. They can do new siding on your home, and you don't have to be in KC or Manhattan. They'll go to Western Missouri, Northeast Kansas, and the entire KC Metro. Go to alencohome.com. That's ALENCO home.com to check out their services, including free estimates. You can also call Sam at 913-961-2165. Okay, that'll wrap it up for the basketball discussion today. Appreciate all of our great sponsors like Elenco, like Home Field Apparel. Get your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon and 360 vodka. Appreciate Nick Springer behind the scenes. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I am John Kurtz. Thanks for listening to another edition of Three Mile. We'll talk to you soon.